And hello, everybody, and welcome back to Magical Journey Podcast. I am your host, Daniel Ian Cahoon. I don't know what was going on with that sound. Um, if you guys were hearing what I was hearing, but I was hearing some wonkiness in that intro. I apologize for that. Um, Before we get started tonight, first of all, there's a couple of things I wanted to kind of throw out there at you. Um, First off, obviously, this was the last couple of weeks have been a very trying and tiresome and difficult week for everybody emotionally, mentally. It doesn't seem like it could get any worse. Um, you guys just pray for each other, pray for our country, pray for our folks, and just remember, share the love as hard and as long and as strong as you can. Um, Steamboat, you made it tonight, dude. Thank you. Um, the other thing I want to bring to you guys' attention, which is really important, is do not forget magicaljourneypodcast.com, where you can find your magical merch, which this show is sponsored by. So go by, check it out, pick it up. I'm going to be adding some new things on there soon. I have a whole line of new product and images that I've got coming up. Okay, got coming up to throw on there. Um, Before I bring my guest up, I also want to give a lot of gratitude and thanks to my mods. You guys are amazing at what you do. I appreciate you. I love each one of you for all the work that you put into it. Um, Keep our mod Ellie in mind tonight. He's kind of having a little bit of car trouble on the side of the road. So let's pray for his safety. All right. Tonight, without further ado, I got to tell you guys, this is the show that I really did not think was ever going to happen. I've told you guys this before. Trying to find somebody that knows about tonight's topic and knows stuff that most people just don't know about it was a difficult task, but I did it. And I want to bring to you guys tonight Ashley Hill, who is definitely the person in the know about our guest tonight. Yeah, about our topic, Indrid Cold.
Thanks
Ashley,
for having me.
hey, thank you for showing up. You know, girl, I gotta tell you, like I said, I was so excited to find you. Um, Tell us a little bit about you, about what you do, and give us a little bit of a heads up of what we're going to be talking about tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Ashley Hilt. I am a Fortean investigator. I already know there's people that are asking, what does Fortean mean? Right? All these terms. What is that one? Fortean is just a blanket statement. It just means that I cover anything from cryptozoology, ufology, the paranormal, the occult. It's based off of the work of Charles Fort. If you are a reader, and you should be, if you're interested in these topics, you need to be reading Charles Fort. I mean, he's very dead now, but um, I wouldn't put it past him to put out a new book. Yeah, anyway, I do that. I have a podcast on Wednesdays. We talk weird, where obviously every Wednesday we're talking about something new and exciting and strange. But of course, I go around. I do lectures on various topics. I got into this because of the Mothman, and it has taken me down some very strange roads, including tonight's topic.
Wow. So the Mothman. Now, I got to tell you, that is definitely my favorite of all topics, just because of all the high strangeness. What was the thing that really hooked you into the story?
I didn't choose it. I was not into these topics at all. Initially, I was a big skeptic. I've always been into cryptids. That's kind of been a thing, but cryptids are different, right? They're just animals that are undiscovered. But I wasn't into like something like Mothman. Obviously, these people just saw a sandhill crane, right? So I'm in Dayton, Ohio. I live about 2 hours away from Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and a couple of my friends were going to the Mothman Festival in 2019 and asked if I wanted to come along. They all made content on the internet. They were all YouTubers, and they were going to make some, silly Mothman video. And it was like, "Ooh, you could come on and you could be the cryptozoologist, right? You could be the expert." I'm like, "Okay, yeah, let's go." So we go, and the Mothman Festival, it's massive now. The attendance is like 25,000 to 30,000 people the whole weekend. It was not that big in 2019. Still big, but not that big. And we went, and I didn't know at the time what to call them, but I experienced a string of synchronicities while we were there. Just really odd things that you just can't explain away with coincidence. And after I had come back home, I mean, really, they started right before the festival, and then they continued, even further after, for a long time. And so this got me into looking into it a little bit more. One of the people that I was there with, one of the YouTubers, was like, I don't want to just make a stupid YouTube video about this anymore. I want to do a whole, like, let's do a documentary. Like, people need to know about this. And I'm like, yeah, that's a great idea. So we started working on this documentary together, and I was executive producer. So I was writing all the scripts, all the research. I was doing it, and it blew me away, all the stuff. And not just the stuff, because when I say the stuff, you guys know the stuff already. You know that there was a flap that happened between 1966 and 1967, roughly around the Ohio River Valley area, where people saw this weird winged humanoid figure, and then eventually it resulted in a bridge collapse. That's the story that everybody knows. But that wasn't all I was finding, and I could not believe that people weren't continuing to talk about this. So yeah, I mean, that's the shortest, easiest way I can put it. However, I know everybody's going to want to hear about it, and that's okay. In 2019, so I was pretty, 2 years into it, and well, the pandemic had happened at that point, and when the pandemic happened, I lost my job, like a lot of people. I lost my job, and I took that as a sign from the universe, and one of those synchronicities that I have to do this full time. And so I did. I started doing this exclusively 24 hours a day. I was traveling all over, going to all these weird places, interviewing all these people. So I'm taking Mothman reports at this time. And in 2021, somebody had approached me who had a Mothman sighting in Atlanta, Georgia. And when they were telling me about their sighting, which I'll tell you guys, her and her boyfriend were in a hotel in Atlanta. They saw a face in their third floor window of their hotel. When they rushed to the window, they saw this creature just zooming off, flying off. And one detail that she shared with me was that her and her boyfriend that night, she wanted to be honest, had taken THC gummies. And she sent me a picture of the packaging and was like, but we do this, like, this is normal. And I don't know what it was about that particular sighting where a light bulb goes off in my head and I go, oh my God, holy shit, I saw that too. And a memory kind of unlocked where I saw Mothman in 2016 and had no idea that any of this predated any of the things that I was doing. And I know how that sounds. I come out with this experience in 2021 when I'm super into the Mothman thing. Of course, the Mothman girl saw a Mothman. I get it, guys. I really do. But I have a witness. I did not tell her what I had seen. She didn't see it with me. I was at a friend's house, and we made some pot brownies. It was just, we were having a girls' night. So we ate our brownies and we drank and had a good time. And when it was time to go to bed, I'm sleeping on her couch, and it's about 2 a.m, and I'm trying to sleep, and I just start freaking out, like emotionally, like I'm freaking out. And listen, if you've ever been really, really high before, you know kind of what that's like. You're like, I gotta calm down. And so one thing that I do when I'm really, really high. As I'll like pick a spot in the room to kind of focus on and just ground myself. And so I did that. And the spot that I picked, it was like catty corner to me. She had like a big TV cabinet and the doors were open on it. There was about 2 feet of space from the top of the cabinet to the top of the ceiling. And I focused in that space around there. And while I'm looking at it, I don't know how to really describe what was happening, but something's forming in the corner of the room. It's like a
Mhm.
head. It's forming. And I'm like, okay. And then the head kind of gives way to shoulders. And then the shoulders start extending outwards. What I assumed at first were arms, and they're kind of like starting to reach over top of me, like coming towards me. And then they kind of go down. And I realize, oh my God, that's wings. And I didn't stay. I got up and I left. I've seen horror movies, and I know that when white people in horror movies run to these things, bad things happen. So I left and I went to my friend's room and I woke up and I'm like, listen, you've got to wake up. I'm freaking out. She was like, ha 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 ha, you're so high. Ha ha ha. But
Wow.
I was like panicking, and she's like, you chill, you're fine. You've done this. We just did this yesterday and you were fine, And but I didn't tell her because again, I didn't believe in any of this stuff.
Right.
I convinced myself that what I saw wasn't actually what I saw. That's not what happened. And just buried it away. And for whatever reason, like I said, that one sighting was finally what it was. It unlocked it. And it made, because I'd learned so much at that time about the Mothman phenomenon, kind of what this looks like for for the witnesses and what it does to them. Everything just kind of fell in line like a puzzle. And I was like, oh my God, this makes sense. So anyway, so that's where I got my start into all of this.
Wow. That's pretty intense because, and you talk about so Atlanta, Georgia, that area
Mhm.
is significant to me because I've lived there before, and there's a lot of strange occurrences that happen in that area. Uh, a lot.
I don't know much about it, so but it wasn't surprising to me to hear of somebody having a Mothman sighting anywhere in the world. So
Right, right. So let me ask you this. So there was obviously Point Pleasant, Atlanta. What are some other areas that you have seen and where you were at there in Ohio? What are some other areas that people have
Mhm.
reported seeing the Mothman at?
Oh, the entire world, everywhere, the entire world. I've gotten reports from across the pond. I've gotten reports from across the country. It everywhere. People see him everywhere. Some people don't call him Mothman. A lot of people don't call him Mothman. Um, some people are going to disagree with this, and that's fine. But some people say, let me tell you about the experience I had with an angel. Let me tell you about the experience I had with a gargoyle. Let me tell you about this experience I had with a demon. Let me tell you about this experience I had with the creature from Jeepers Creepers. They don't call it Mothman everywhere. And that's kind of where I learned that things were falling short in Mothman reporting, is because people are like, oh, it's Mothman. They said it's Mothman, so it's got to be Mothman. Nobody's really talking about these alternative experiences where it's the same thing. And that seems so wild to me, because even Keel, he referred to it as the Garuda, and that's not an American belief, So, I mean, this is something that's old. It's very, very old. It's been around for a very long time. And people don't realize it.
Right, right. That's one of the things uh, I know in my research. One of the areas that I found very interesting that had reported seeing Mothman was Chernobyl. Oh, that to me, I was just like, wow, how that's kind of
Um,
deep and scary.
So I'm gonna be the wet blanket. The Chernobyl sighting wasn't real. It was created to market the movie, so that wasn't accurate. There's also people say that it was seen before 9/11, and that's never been proven either. This thing isn't necessarily around tragedy, and even like the Silver Bridge collapse is very not really in line with genuine Mothman sightings. It doesn't seem to bring tragedy or warn anybody of anything specific just in what I found, I think that Keel was very exhausted with the Mothman, and I think that he kind of created, because there were Mothman sightings after that bridge went down. They
Mhm.
continued. It's just nobody talked about it anymore because they were too busy talking about real people that died. Um, but I think that Keel got very tired of chasing it because, well, frankly, it is really exhausting. Case in point, people are talking about they never heard of it materializing before. Okay, well, one of the original witnesses, Linda Scarberry, the very famous encounter with the young couples where it chased them through the TNT area.
Oh, yeah.
Linda continued to see it later in her life. She
Yeah.
has an experience. Her and her mother-in-law saw it when it materialized inside of their home.
Oh,
So those aren't unusual stories at all. It's just that, again, it all gets overshadowed by what people think they know of as the Mothman. It's deep. It's a big topic.
no doubt, no doubt.
Well,
So,
I'll come back and we'll talk about it another time. I don't want to get too deep into it, but
yeah, definitely. I want to because, like I said, when it comes to the Mothman, there's so much that I'm still learning. It's a deep story,
me
like you
too. And
said.
I've been doing it 6 years, so
So let me ask you about the Chicago sightings
sure.
because a lot of those took place in, uh, was it, I forget the name of the actual suburb, but it's mostly Hispanic suburb
Yes.
there
Yep,
in Chicago.
yep.
Was it? I want to say it's Little Town, but that's not right.
I don't remember. Yeah, I don't remember exactly what it's called. So the Chicago. So the guy. So I'm getting ready to get a podcast co-host. But my co-host that's leaving is Tobias Whalen, the guy that literally wrote the book on Mothman prophecies. Or I'm sorry, Lake Michigan Mothman.
Mhm,
And he's the guy, and him and I got together because he's up there in Wisconsin, I'm down here in Ohio, and so we work really well together, just on an investigative level. I can't interview people up there, but I can trust him to go do it. So of course we've been in talks quite a bit about this topic. So in general, I mean, Tobias has been really good at, locating and cataloging the stories there. He got into it because he was a MUFON investigator, and MUFON had received reports of a winged humanoid in that general area that they just ignored because
mhm.
MUFON's not great. But again, another topic for another day. But he took it and picked it up and was like, maybe we should, this sounds like Mothman. Maybe we should pay attention to this a little bit. And if everybody knows Mothman, it's not really cryptid. It's more ufology than cryptozoology. And so, he definitely got into all those things there. Well, all of these sightings taking place in more of the Hispanic area made it difficult because Tobias is very much a white guy and he does not speak their language. Um, but he partnered with somebody else in the area. His name's Manuel. He runs the UFO Clearinghouse website, and Manuel was, able to go out and interview some of these people. So, and then something else was happening. Lon Strickler was reporting sightings out of Chicago O'Hare Airport specifically, and kind of with pretty decent regularity. So of course I had a vested interest, in that area, and I haven't been, um, but Tobias has been pretty major in helping me figure it out, because one of the things that I noticed in a lot of those witness reports, specifically O'Hare, is
Mhm.
that they're all anonymous. And I didn't really understand, if people are seeing Mothman, why were they reporting them only to Lon Strickler? Why weren't they? Tobias had written a whole book about it. Why were new reports coming out after Tobias wrote a book about that area? Where were people finding Lon and not finding Tobias to report them to him? And so I had questions. I'm like, well, who are these people? How do we? So I started searching for O'Hare witnesses, and not just that. My other co-host at that time was a Chicago native. Um,
Mm.
he was an engineer for Chicago Public Schools. And engineers in that area hang out. They have retreats together and they talk. And he knew a few engineers at O'Hare. And when he would bring it up to them, they were just like, I've never even heard of Mothman. I have no idea what you're talking about. I've had people go to the airport and ask the people working there, what they think about the Mothman sightings. And I'm going to go do it one day. I'm going to go spend the whole day and night until they kick me out and do it. Just because I want to be absolutely certain about what it is that I'm finding. But none of them have ever heard of this thing. Now, if you have reports of a winged humanoid that's at your place of work all the time, he's not so famous, but he's pretty popular. People that aren't into this stuff know who Mothman is. How come they're not hearing about it? How come they're not seeing it? How come, so I have questions about some of the sightings in the area. Again, I've never talked to any of the witnesses there. Tobias has talked to witnesses, but not O'Hare witnesses. So that part of the story kind of gets a little strange. And I just, like I said, before I go on record saying anything official, I've got questions. But there are certainly more winged humanoid sightings in that area. And again, it's not unusual to me. I got a report this week from Massachusetts. People see it everywhere. It's everywhere.
Yeah, Chicago is definitely an area of high strangeness. They have South Lakeshore Drive had a report of a canine type creature that crossed the road there at like 4:00 in the morning. The lady that saw it referred to it as a werewolf looking creature. Down toward Midlothian and those areas. There's Bachelor Grove Cemetery, which is just saturated with high strangeness. A lot of reports of spirit activity there, vanishing houses, all kinds of crazy stuff going on there. The same thing with there's another one of the cemeteries there that has a hitchhiker ghost involved with it. So there's, and then of course you get into, so let me back up a little bit. I was living in Champaign, Illinois during 9/11. Okay. I was out that week when the airspace was completely shut down. I went out with a couple of friends of mine to go to Perkins in downtown Champaign to grab something to eat because we were hungry. We were driving on our way there, and there were these 4 bright, when I say bright, I mean very bright, almost headlight looking lights. That were flying very silently through the sky in a box formation. And I watched these things just like ever so slowly, just kind of like gracefully go through. And I'm thinking to myself, there's no noise, you can't see a craft. All you see are these lights. What's going on here? And of course they were like, hey, there's not supposed to be anything flying around. What is this? And so there's a lot of high strangeness, and of course, if you want to get into the state of Illinois altogether, let's not forget about the Wasika Wonder. That's a whole story in itself. God, that whole story freaks me out. So seeing the winged creatures, especially out of O'Hare, I know O'Hare has had a lot of UFO activity, a lot of reported high strangeness around the airport. There's just a weird feeling when you go in that building. It's so big and so overwhelming. So I understand that there's a lot going on there. We have the Mothman, but then we have this other interesting experience that when it first came to my attention, I was so weirded out is not even a good way of putting it. Like it
Okay.
was a mind, just all that shit up here just went blank. I was just like, okay, this is so weird. I can't even like wrap my head around it. And that was when I heard the very first words about something called the smiling man.
Okay. Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I, this is a little creepy to me. This is very creepy to me. So let's let's go there. Let's talk about the smiling man, or he who we call Indrid Cold. So explain to us a little bit about Indrid and what what the heck are we dealing with here?
Um, so yeah. So let's get into the basics. Obviously I wrote the book on it. So I've got my book handy. I'm gonna read you guys something from the book here in just a moment. But basically what happened 10 days before the big Mothman sighting took place, right? The famous Scarberry Mallet sighting. Um, there was a gentleman by the name of Woodrow Derenberger, just a regular average Joe. And he was driving home from his job. He was driving from Marietta, Ohio to Mineral Wells, West Virginia, right? They border each other. It's no big deal. So while he's driving home, he notices a very strange car that is riding his ass. And, of course, he's like, my God, this guy's rude. So he pulls over to let the car pass him. And then instead of the car passing him, it jumps up into the air and flies over his car, which cars didn't do in the 1960s. They still don't, unfortunately. And then whatever this thing was, ended up looking like the way he described it was very weird and unconventional. Usually we think of UFOs, we think of like the saucer, right? Or nowadays it's the Tic Tac, right? That's the hot new UFO out there, the sphere. This one looked like a kerosene lamp on its side. And that's the way he describes it, the way I like to describe it to people, because people also don't use kerosene lamps anymore, usually. It is a piece of candy rolled up in the wrapper, right? So two sides that are flared out, but a big bulky middle. So this craft, whatever it was, it lands in front of his vehicle, and before it's blocking the road, so he can't really get around it. So door opens up, and he's like, "Oh my God, it's gonna have tentacles, right? It'll have 50 eyeballs. What's it gonna be?" And out of the craft comes the scariest thing that you can think of. A man, some man comes out comes out of the craft. And I'm sorry, I can't take myself seriously. Um, no, really, just some guy comes out. He looks to be roughly middle aged. He looks very Italian, actually, dark hair, kind of darker skin. Looks nice. He's in his nice suit. And he approaches Woody's vehicle. And while he's approaching the vehicle, he starts communicating with Woodrow telepathically. And he's like, "Hey, sir, I'd like to have a conversation with you. Could you roll your window down?" So I know what people are thinking, right? I'm now getting to the conversation. Ashley, you totally skipped over the grinning man part. I want to read you guys exactly how Woodrow Derenberger described Indrid Cold the very first time he met him. This is what he said. He had a very pleasant appearance and was about 5 feet 10 or 5 feet 11 inches tall and weighed approximately 180 to 185 pounds. His hair was very dark and thick, and it was combed straight back over his head. He seemed to have a very good and look normal in every way. Indra did not have a weird, creepy grin about him. He was just looked normal. But we'll get into the grinning man himself. Where that started, I think it was something that Keel was very well known for exaggerating a lot of the reports he got. And I think it was a Keel exaggeration. Keel was a writer, in his own right, and rightfully so. You read his books, they're very easy to read, very entertaining, and that's fine, but it's definitely morphed into something else. So this man approaches Woody's car, and he gets out. Woodrow gets out. He wasn't afraid of him. He was very unthreatening. And so they strike up a conversation. It lasts about 10 minutes. Indrid's just like, hey, what's that over there? And Woody's like, oh, it's a city. And he's like, oh, we have that too, but we don't call it city. That's a weird word. We call it gathering because that's where we gather. Duh. And Woody's like, oh, that makes sense. And, after they have a little conversation, Indrid looks at Woody. Hadn't introduced himself yet. I think he did introduce himself as Cold at that time. They call me Cold. And he said, I'll be back. He says that I'm going to come back. I want you to go. I want you to tell people about what you saw today. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to show everybody me. I'm going to introduce myself. It's going to be a big party. So go tell the whole town about it. It'll be wonderful. So he does. He goes back home to his wife and 2 kids, and he is very visibly shook by what just happened. And he starts kind of telling his wife, and his wife is like, "Hold on." Yells at the kids, tell the kids to go to bed, and she's like, "Repeat exactly what you're saying." And he's telling her, I guess I met a man from space. I don't really know. He was driving this really weird car. It's kind of ugly. I don't know how I feel about it. And she's like, okay, well, hold on. So they call the police immediately. And the police show up, and of course they interview him, but the police don't show up by themselves. As a matter of fact, they showed up with an officer from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. The officer sits down with him and says, look, I believe you. We have record of these weird things in the sky. I just want to know what you saw. Tell us what you saw. And what he does, he tells him the whole thing. And again, it's pretty uneventful. It's not very long. But he does make contact with something that came from the sky. And, then they all kind of go about their business. Well, people then, and he started telling people whatever this thing was, that it's coming back. So people then kind of ran with this. It made big news. It was all over the media at the time. And my God, people were so bored in the 1960s. This was really cool and interesting for them. So they started flocking to the Derenberger home. And as they're kind of camping outside of their house waiting for this guy to show up. And eventually, Woodrow starts having more telepathic communication with this gentleman. At that point in time, I think it was maybe their second or third conversation. He finally tells him, my name is Indrid Cold. And Woody's like, listen, people are starting to think I'm nuts. Are you coming back here? And he's like, yeah, of course. Just chill, bro. It's happening. And so one day, Woodrow comes home from work. His house is, of course, flooded with tons of people, because it always was at that point in time. Everybody's there to see the man from space. But he goes into the home. His wife's like, come in here, come, giving him the eye, but being very discreet. And she leads him to the back of the house. And guess who's there? Our buddy, Indrid Cold. He's not just there by himself. At that point, he's there with a second gentleman that he introduces as Demo Hassan. So Indrid brought a buddy, and they all sat in the back of the house and hung out for a long time, just chit-chatting about their own lives, about their human lives, about their not really human lives. And things just kind of escalate from there. I mean, that's the initial meeting. But Woodrow Derenberger goes on to, curate a lifelong friendship with this man and with all of the other space people. And what I mean by that, when I say that, Woodrow started taking trips to Indrid's planet. Indrid comes from a planet called Lanulos. He is Lanulosian, okay? And it's very much like our planet, except way more advanced. These people, they live about twice the amount of time that we did. So they live to be about 200 years old, whereas we're like 80s, 90s is really pushing it now. But they're very normal, but they'll have kind of alternative ways of doing things. They have, baby policies where you can only have so many children. But they have a very low divorce rate because everybody can read each other's mind all the time. So they don't really have a lot of disagreements because anything can really just be solved by communicating properly. They walk around naked because it's not a big deal to them. There's just a lot of very euphoric things about Lanulos, but it's not just Lanulos. Dima Hassan, I believe he was from a different planet. I think he was allegedly from Saturn or Jupiter or one of those. Um, there's tons of other people involved here. So Indrid would show up and he would have a buddy with him. Sometimes they're women, sometimes they're men. Sometimes it's his kids. So a lot of times, some of the stories you'll hear is that Indrid would like bring his whole family to the Derenberger house and they would all have picnics and stuff. And everybody coming to the home all the time, trying to catch a glimpse of this man are none the wiser. They have no clue because they all just look like us. And so it was very easy for them to kind of blend into the settings. So I'm going to take a break and let you talk for a second because I've said a lot.
So I'm kind of trying to reflect on everything you're saying because there was a lot.
It's a lot
there.
And that's just the first, like I'm not even into why I'm here, right? So
well, and I think it's very important for us to understand the magnitude of I was trying to figure out what did I just click? The magnitude of this story actually. One of the things I do want to throw in before we go much farther, though, is if you have made it this far into the show and you have an opinion one way or the other on the Mothman, what exactly is the Mothman or Indrid Cold, drop me a line, drop me a little bit in the comments and tell me your thoughts and ideas on the Mothman. With that said, when I first started reading about the Mothman, about Indrid Cold, about the different stories of the two, I was like, is this one and the same creature? Is one a manifestation of the other? Are they separate? Is this some kind of weird dual Hindu kind of thing? What's going on here? Because I mean, it's really hard to separate the two for me.
yeah.
So that was kind of where I just kind of I literally had to stop. I had to stop and I had to take a breath because my first impression was no, you can't separate one from the other. Somehow they are yeah, they are connected. I can't even say intricately very well tonight, but they are very connected somehow. And it felt to me like almost like one was a direct manifestation of the other, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And that's where I think the mystery of Indrid Cold became very overwhelming and power impacting to me. Was who are you? What is the significance to this event with you? And is the Mothman maybe a what's the words I'm looking for here? A manifestation of the collective consciousness of the planet itself that you're from? Could that be it? It's mind-boggling to me. So I guess one of my questions to you is how do you reconcile between Mothman and Indrid Cold and now maybe even the Smiling Man, which I'm still on kind of on the edge of my seat trying to figure out where he comes into all of that.
That's okay. Um, well, I reconciled it because I asked him if he was involved with Mothman at all. So getting into, again, that's the Woodrow Derenberger part of the story. Listen, if you guys want to learn about it, he wrote a book about it. You can read it. It's like 70 pages. You can, and it's huge fonts. You go read it. It's called Visitors from Lanulos. Um, but getting back to where I stand in all of this and how I'm involved. So, of course, as I'm investigating the Mothman situation, you can't fully investigate it without having the same exact questions that you're asking. How is this tied to Mothman? Everybody ties it together because it happened in such close proximity to each other that surely it's got to be. This is all Indrid's fault. Right? It's happening because of Indrid. He came here and he started this. So, I got into it because I tracked down Tanya Derenberger. That's Woodrow Derenberger's daughter. Because by the time I got into this, Woody's dead. I can't talk to him. So I just found her on Facebook and sent her a message and was like, "Hey, I'm working on a Mothman documentary. If you could help and share your dad's story, I'd love to hear it. What's going on." At that time, I was very skeptical of that story, of the Indrid story, because Indrid had died and then he came back to life. And this all came from Tanya. And I was like, oh, that's not a good look. But you know what? I treat everybody very fairly. It's not necessarily my job to pick apart your story and call you a liar. It's just my job to get to the bottom of the facts, right? As an investigator, I have to do my due diligence. So I wanted to talk to her. And she did say that. She said Indrid Cold was dead, made a big public announcement about it. And then all of a sudden he wasn't anymore. And that was confusing and weird for everybody. So I get a hold of Tanya and I tell her, look, I'm in West Virginia, like every weekend. And I pretty much live there now. And, can I come talk to you at some point? And she's like, oh yeah, I'd love to talk to you. So in between that time, Tanya was very sick when I met her. She had MS, and it had really taken a toll. And this was all during like the pandemic, so it was a while before I could actually like physically see her in person. And I thought, well, in the meantime, I'm going to do what nobody else seems to do. If Indrid is real and Tanya really does still talk to him and he still comes and visits her, I'm not going to just ask her to facilitate a meeting on the first, at dinner. I'm going to actually befriend this woman and, treat her like God, a human being instead of a story to sell, and, get to know her. So while we couldn't meet, I did. I started becoming friends with Tanya. I learned a lot about her. We actually had a lot in common. We were both domestic abuse survivors. She, in her younger days, bred Saint Bernard dogs and was like super into that. She had tons of fundraisers that she did for MS, and she was a big advocate for things like that. I mean, she had a whole life beyond Lanulus and Indrid. So we talked about a ton of things, and I never steered the conversation away. Like, well, I don't want to talk about your dumb dogs. I want to talk about Indrid. No, I was interested and engaged, and again, treated her like a person. So when we did finally meet, I mean, she was so she was just so bad off physically. I actually have the last autographed copy that she ever signed of her book. She went on to live like 2 more years after that. But her hands were just, she couldn't really use them. She was real pitiful. And, we physically got to meet in person, and I really sat down and listened to her entire story from beginning to end. But when that happened, as we continued to grow a friendship, she was like, she started telling me that Indrid could not wait to meet me, that she, started talking about me to him. He was really excited to get to know me. He was so excited that she had sad, but so excited that she had a friend. And I love that, not just because I'm a bleeding heart, because I am, and I love people, and I'm just too nice, but, but because of course I wanted Indrid Cold to like me, So we would talk about a lot of things about Indrid, of course. If I ever had any questions about him or that I wanted her to pass along to him, I would ask her. And yeah, one of those questions was, "What's the deal with the Mothman? Are you involved in that? Did you bring him with you? Did you create him? Is he your loyal pet?" We don't know. And the answer was, I have no idea. There's so many weird things in this huge universe. It's infinite. And why people continue to think that I'm involved with that, I have no idea. So Indrid himself, through Tanya, says that he's not involved with that. And all I can do is take that man's word for it. I mean, honestly, people can speculate, and that's fine. About what they believe that connection is, but like, at the end of the day, if Indrid said he didn't do it, I mean, there's no better authority on it than himself. So like I said, I just have to take his word for it. As far as the grinning man goes, I've looked because when Woody was doing his stuff and his lectures and his talks and his book and things like that, he found other people, not just him, who also had contact with similar people to Indrid. I don't want to say they're Lanulosians because not all of them lived on Lanulos. They lived on other planets, but he found similar people with similar. As a matter of fact, when he went to Lanulos at one point, he found a couple that was from Earth that had moved from Earth to Lanulos because they loved it. And I thought, well, surely there's got to be people now that contact these people besides Tanya. Like, they didn't just disappear. Where are all these people? So of course I've gone on a campaign to try to find folks that have similar stories to share. I have not found anybody, but I have found multiple people who have had an encounter with the grinning man. And these stories are not like Indrid. Tanya has so many super wholesome stories about Indrid, but she's got really one super wholesome one where her and her mom are at the grocery one day, and the grocery at the time also doubled as like an ice cream parlor.
Mm.
And she wanted an ice cream. She kept saying, "Mom, I want ice cream, I want ice cream, I want ice cream." And her mom's like, "Wait, wait, 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 wait." Well, she sat up at the counter, bored of the grocery shopping, and all of a sudden they sat down the biggest sundae she's ever seen in her life in front of her. And she looks up and she looks over, and there's Indrid at the other end of the counter, and he got her the ice cream. I mean, this is not a man who is creeping around your bedroom at night or creeping around corners and alleys, smiling weirdly at people. Like, it didn't fit. It didn't make sense. However, people are reporting this phenomena with this weird, dark, ghastly figure that's horrifying. I went to the very first lecture I gave. It was about the Mothman. It was at the Marietta Paranormal Conference Festival Party, whatever you want to call those things. And when I first walked in, the girl there was like, "Oh, good, you're the grinning man person." And I was like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Well, we have the grinning man here." And I was like, Indrid Cold's here at the hotel. He's staying here with us. What pleasure. You don't need me to talk." But she's like, "No, no, 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 no. The hotel's really haunted. It's a really historically haunted hotel, and people in the basement, like the most evil entity we have here is the grinning man." And so she goes on to tell me all kinds of stories about this guy. And she's like, "So if you want to check out the basement while you're here, like, go ahead. Usually we make people pay for it, but you're special." And I'm like, "Okay, great." So we do. We go down in the basement, and I don't know. It's a basement. Basements are creepy, it's just the way it is. But we go down there, and we're kind of just walking the whole area. It's big. There's different hallways and stuff, and there's like a boiler room. And we went in one room, and it was creepy because when the night before they did a ghost tour, and they had like all these chairs set up, and like they had like a Ouija board, and like they were doing like a seance or something. And I'm like, "That's cute." But as we're walking around, we come to a area that has no lights. There's nothing there. It's just like pipes and, industrious stuff. And but there's a door that's closed, and I'm like, "Well, I'm going through that door." So I'm there with one of my people that investigates with me on my team. Her name's Anne. And I walk up to the door to go open it, and as soon as I go to touch that knob, inches before I get to the knob, I'm like, and I hear, And I'm like, "Oh, okay.
Mm-mm.
Not, we're not going in that room." And honestly, as soon as that happened, I don't know if it was just the way it was unexpected. I don't know if it was like the lock jiggling, the door handle jiggling. I don't know what it was. But fear just went through my body, and I was like, "I'm gonna leave." So I did. I left and didn't investigate further. Didn't want to know. But that's just one instance of many that I've had of people reporting the same grinning man phenomena to people. I think that it's its own deal. I get why people put them together in the same group, but I'm happy to be the person to kind of, separate them a little bit because Indrid, he's nice. He seems nice.
Right, right. That's the thing of it is like when you just things I've heard, the stories I've heard about Indrid versus the thing with the grinning man,
Yeah.
they are very different, and like the vibe is completely different. So a lot of times, and again, I go back to the same thought you have on Kill. Um, he was a great investigator. He's a great writer. There's a lot of good things about his work. However, like you said, there was a lot of things exaggerated at times, and when you're trying to get to the bottom of things, it's not always easy to do when one of your key sources is kind of out there.
Yeah.
I mean, for lack of a better way of putting it. So when you obviously people are the grinning men makes people very uncomfortable. It's not a story that you know, we are real fond of.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
don't have like warm fuzzy memories whenever they come in contact with the story or the personage either. What what do you feel is, I guess, again, I'm trying to in my mind pull them all apart to put them together in an order and a way that makes sense, and you can actually have it, but there's nothing logical about this.
No, there isn't.
There's no logic to it. It's very almost exasperating
Mm, yeah.
to untangle the story when when you when people ask you, what is your thought, what do you think is going on here? Bottom line, like, how do you go about explaining to them, I just don't freaking know?
Well,
Because
and
it
that's a good answer. I mean, it really is. It's honest. It's the people that are like, "Oh, I know exactly what it is, and it's this," and it's like, "You don't know. Shut up." I hate that. That's very. None of us know because if any of us knew, then the rest of us would be out of a job. Okay, and none of us are. So, that's the reality of it.
right, right, and I think a lot of people want the comfort of knowing.
Yeah,
It's because
absolutely.
it's when you get to something, especially something as complex as the story of Point Pleasant and all of the things that happen there, and you know the complexity of the Mothman sightings and all of the high strangeness that occurs around all of these things. Um, and by the way, I know there's an interview, a video of the interview, um, where they talk about, I think it's from like the 1950s or so, when they actually interviewed, what was dude's name again? The original person who met Indrid Cold.
Oh, Woodrow Derenberger. Yeah.
Yeah. So when they first interviewed him, there's a video on YouTube of the interview,
Mm-hmm.
and you're watching it, and you try to put in context the time period and kind of frame all that in a way that kind of makes some sense in terms of that.
Yeah.
It's very
Absolutely.
difficult. It's very difficult, and it's like,
Mhm.
I mean, you're saying there, and he's just, his demeanor is very calm. He's very matter of fact. The way that he tells his story, I mean, it's obviously very, you know, choreographed in 1950s, like interviewer
Sure.
style. So you've got that kind of, you know, um, vocalization and all that attached to it. So that can be a little bit off-putting, but it's like his whole demeanor makes you go, this shit really happened. I mean, this guy is just so matter of fact about everything. It's like he's telling you, like he's talking about going to church on Sunday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's well, and the original Woodrow Derenberger situation with Indrid, some of the things that we try to look at as far as proof goes. I'm going to tell some stuff that'll blow everybody's mind because of course people listen to this, they believe it. But when you tell somebody who doesn't believe in this stuff, some of these facts that I'm going to share with you, they're like, "What? Really? No way." And I'm like, "Yeah, those people are paid." No. So again, my study is in a lot of the people that this stuff happens to. So I'm very interested in what their life is like going forward after having these bizarre experiences because long story short on this one, my take on the Mothman is that this is a gravely personal thing that we experience as witnesses. And it is life changing to us, but not in the sense of like, oh man, Mothman, I didn't think that was real. I mean, it is like catastrophically life changing to us as human beings. We're not the same people after it happens. And it's just because everything in your life takes a certain track and it's all of us. It's every single witness I've ever talked to. So of course that's where I get super, super excited to learn about other people's things. When it came to Woodrow Derenberger, he couldn't keep a job after he started talking about Indrid. Every single job he had, people would find out where he worked and would constantly harass him. He was a salesman, and back in the 1960s, that was going door to door into people's houses, bringing your product, trying to sell it. He was damn good at his job before all this happened. But he tells a story about how he had a call one time. He was working for a new company, and he comes out to the woman's house and she's not interested in the product at all. She's like, "Is it true?" And he's like, what true? You got pregnant while you were on that planet?" And he's like, "Yes, I did. I got pregnant while I was on that planet by the aliens, and I had an alien baby and whatever." And he really did. Like he really was like, "Yes, whatever, that's real." So then of course the rumor mill was that, oh, he's pregnant with alien, because people were starting rumors anyway, so he might as well have fun with it. But really, he couldn't keep a job. I mean, these people were interested in buying anything from him. They were simply interested in talking about the weirdness, and so he struggled with that. He would leave home and he would leave home. So Tanya was 4 years old when this started. The night that he came home and told of his meeting with Indrid, she was 4, and so she grew up with this her entire life. So a lot of this I've learned from her perspective, but some of it is things that he's told over years and years. But he was never home. And, her mom was very obviously annoyed with this. He wasn't home and he couldn't keep a job. Well, why wasn't he home? Well, if he wasn't giving lectures across the country to different people at different UFO events and things, he was, and there's no money in this. I know people think there is, there really isn't. But he wasn't making anything. But if he wasn't there, guess what? He was with his buddies in Lanulos. He was on another planet for months. He would just leave and disappear. And eventually she divorced him. She actually ended up marrying took the kids, moved to Cleveland, Ohio, and married one of the one of the UFO guys in that area that she had met through Woodrow.
Wow.
But people were like, well, he was crazy, right? It's your terrible ex-husband. Obviously, he was crazy. And she's like, no, he's not crazy. Indrid's real. I've met him. I've had him and his children at my house. I have fed them hot dogs on holidays. Like, these are real people. I divorced him because he was never around and he was a deadbeat, not making any money. So that was her story, and she didn't like all of this attention. I mean, they were afraid. Once the people started coming and camping out at their house, I mean, you've got crazy West Virginians that are in your driveway in tents with huge guns ready to shoot down the alien man to prove something. This was scary for them. It wasn't fun. It was fun for a couple days until you have no privacy, then it's not. So she says that's why, there was a psychologist who did testing on Woodrow. And the craziest part that came out about this was that not only was he cleared, so it was done through I believe it was done through NICAP at the time, which was that was like the 60s version of MUFON, right? Really big UFO group that everybody knew about. But they paid for this testing to get done. And not only was he cleared by the psychologist says, I know he's not crazy not because I tested him, but because I've spoken to Indrid too. And people would come out of the woodwork and go, yeah, I've met him. Oh, you haven't met Indrid? You don't know who he is? Tanya says that Indrid Cold was at Woodrow Derenberger's funeral. And again, everybody's none the wiser. He just looks like us. So he was constantly a figure. It seemed like everybody was meeting him at one point or another and had no idea, that was the case. And so, that part of it was pretty believable. And I thought, okay, that seems, a lot of that seems credible. You have professionals coming forward vouching for this guy. So, great, good, grand. However, there were a lot of things about Tanya's story that did not sit right with me. And some of them are silly, like his age. I would constantly ask her how old Indrid is. How old is he? And that's one thing I'll do with my witnesses. I'll kind of ask them the same questions over and over again to see if they give the same answers over and over again. Something like somebody's age should be matter of fact. You know exactly how old they are. Well, Indrid, depending on the day that you asked Tanya, was anywhere from 90 years old to 110. Just depends on the day. So that was weird. At one point, we found Woodrow Derenberger's obituary, and we noticed that Tanya was not even listed on his obituary. No daughter was. And I thought, And so we started looking into it a little bit further. And I probably could have just asked Tanya outright at that point, but I didn't really trust her. Tanya's adopted. That's not Woody's biological daughter. So everybody's theory that they're just a family of nuts is gone because there's no genetics there. Yeah, he adopted her at 2 years old, married her mom, adopted her through the family, and yeah. So, but there were things that she would say and do that made me very suspicious of the entire story. And then, I'm kind of pulling away a little bit because it had been 3 years and I hadn't met Indrid. And I'm like, she hadn't even given me a picture of him. And I'm like, Tanya, I will pay you lots of money for just a picture of this man. Like the next time he comes over, you have a phone, just take a picture of him, because that's the most obvious. Why are there no pictures of him? But she always said she had some. They were, in her basement. She had just moved. When I met her, she had just moved into this house in Parkersburg, and it was a whole ordeal. But it never really happened. So at one point she ended up in the hospital, but she kind of disappeared. So she was always kind of one of those people where she had like a new phone number every week. She was always losing her phone or so she didn't hang out with really good people. So they were always selling her phone for drug money or whatever. It's West Virginia. If you guys have been there, beautiful place, terrible people. But anyway, so it wasn't uncommon for me to kind of but pretty much every time she got a new phone, she'd be like, here's my new number. We were good friends. Like I said, I think I was the only friend that she really had that wasn't trying to get something out of her, even though, I kind of was, let's be real. But, so she disappears for like a month and I'm like, okay, what's going on? So I get on her Facebook and I post on her wall and I'm like, hey, has anybody heard from Tanya? Is she okay? Well, Tanya had a bunch of kids, and I knew that she had a bunch of kids, and I knew that she was estranged from all of them except for she had one daughter who sometimes they were good, sometimes they weren't. Um, but one of her other daughter, who was not the sometimes they were and weren't, had reached out to me and was like, yeah, I just want to let you know my mom's good. She's in the hospital. She's got COVID or something, right? She's getting over it and she'll be back, when she can. And I'm like, cool. But then she's like, listen, under no circumstances whatsoever do you give her any money. And I'm like, what? My mom is going to use this and milk it for everything that she can. She always does with every hospital stay she ever has. She is very sickly, but she's a grifter. She has ripped off all these fundraisers that she's told you about. She is all about making money. She makes up these crazy sob stories and blah, and she's just like talking mad shit about her. And I'm like,
Wow.
okay, so Tanya's a con artist. Um, I get it now. So this is fake. So, after she tells me all kinds of very personal things that usually you don't tell somebody you've never met before, which is fine with childhood trauma. I get it. And that was my attitude. Like, girl, your secret's safe with me. I get it. So, she tells me all this stuff and it was just terrible. And then eventually she's like, how do you know my mom? Because it's weird that like a 30-year-old woman is hanging out with your mom that lives in Ohio. And it's weird. I get it. So I tell her it's the Indrid stuff, and I'm getting ready for it. I was hesitant to tell her why we talked because I'm like, she's gonna tell me it's all bullshit. Here it is.
Mm.
And I wasn't really ready for that. So I'm like, it's all the Indrid stuff, no big deal. And she's like, oh, okay. Anyway, so this one time when I was 13 and living with my mom, and I'm just like, so she just entirely skips over the Indrid thing completely. Like it didn't have anything at all to say about it. I was like, this is so bizarre. So then I'm like, does she know Indrid? But I didn't want to ask. I didn't want to be rude. Again, she's telling me how bad her mom is and how much she hates her. And, where I had just lost my dad and me and my dad had a really strained relationship. And so we were kind of having some therapy over that. And I'm like, you don't have to, if she dies, you don't have to feel bad, I mean, you don't. And just kind of connecting on that level. So it didn't seem appropriate to be the time to be like, okay, so what's the deal with Indrid then? You didn't really say anything about it. And then we didn't really, her and I didn't talk much beyond that. Her mom comes home from the hospital and, she was around for a little while. Probably about 6 months later, she did pass away. But I didn't know what to do with any of this. Tanya knew, I told her all the time, if you die and I don't meet Indrid, that means the story dies with you because there's nothing else to tell. You've written your book, your dad wrote his, and if Indrid is not going to keep visiting and he's not going to make a connection with somebody else here, there's nothing else that I can do. She had a second book she was writing and she had written some of it. When I say some of it, it's like a page and a half. It's not a lot. It's very, very small. But she had gotten a new cover and everything, and she would talk to me about it and what she should put in there and if I would promote it on my show and things like that. And of course, I was going to. But I have it. She sent it to me. And so, she dies, and I felt kind of jilted. I mean, I felt kind of just gypped. I just wasted 3 years of my life and nothing came of it.
Right.
But I decided I was getting ready to speak at the Whitville UFO Festival. It happens in Whitville, Virginia every year. And decided, well, why not talk about Indrid, right? And people knew for a long time that I was like the Indrid Cold contact, because I'd ask questions to Tanya and she'd send them to Indrid. But I'm working on this presentation that I'm doing for it, and things started getting weird for me. So a couple of months before that all happened, I'd gotten a new co-host for the show, Tobias Whalen. We're talking about different marketing strategies. We're talking about getting on the TikTok. That's a popular thing for young people to do. And, we're both old, so we have no idea what we're doing. And I'm like, well, I'll get on TikTok and I'll just kind of play with it and see, what happens and how it works, right? I'll learn it a little bit before we kind of, jump on there. So I had a TikTok account when TikTok first started, but I deleted it, never used it. So I re-download the app again, and one day I get a very strange notification, and it pops up. Tanya Derenberger and 7 other people are following you. And I'm like, well, that's weird. Tanya's dead. But I didn't think much of it because, I always hear TikTok's a Chinese app. So I'm like, yeah, these apps and stuff, they're glitchy, right? But that happened again and again and again, and sometimes multiple times a week. And it continued to happen. So I start like digging into this. I'm like, what is happening? Why is this happening? If it's a glitch, what is it? And I put it out there for all of social media. I'm like, what do you guys think is happening? Of course, people are like, oh, it's a fake account, right? Somebody's faking Tanya and it's not real. It's a scam. Well, it wasn't. You can actually go to TikTok and you can see where people follow you when they follow you.
Mhm.
And I could see that Tanya had followed me about a year and a half before that point. And it was her account. But there was no new Tanya notifications or anything. And people were following me. I did have new followers just because I was active again on there. But it wasn't it wasn't Tanya. None of them were pretending to be Tanya. So I start messaging the Tanya account and I'm like, hello? And every single time I sent a message to this account, it didn't go through. And I have pictures of all this in my book if you guys want to see it. But it wouldn't go through. And then, so I go and I talk about Indrid at the UFO festival, and it went great. And I thought, well, maybe something will happen from this, and other people will come forward finally, and I can, get a new connect, right? But I haven't yet. But things still continue to get weird. I started talking about Indrid more, doing in different shows, talking about him, and every single time I did, things got odd. There were always like I do these podcasts and there were always like electrical interferences and stuff that would happen or, technical issues. And that happens, when you do a show like this, it happens.
Right.
But it happened every time I talked about him. And, that was weird. My daughter one time had like a weird glitch that happened. I have a 13-year-old daughter. And so she's always attached to a screen. And she had a weird glitch happening because she was listening to me talk about Indrid on the show and she decided to like Google him. And she couldn't like get it to work. It was weird. She couldn't like get her iPad to work. And it's little weird things here and there. But one day, I messaged the account and instead of just hello, because I'd get the notification, I'd send the hello, it wouldn't send. One day I message it and I say, hello, Indrid? ? And it finally sent. And nobody ever said anything. So I decide, okay, it's time to put the book out there. So I sit down and I write this book on Indrid Cold and there's tons of other stuff in there. There's allegedly a picture in there of one of his kids that Tanya had sent me. All kinds of neat stuff for you guys to check out. But the biggest reason why I wanted to put it out there was for it to be a part 1, because I really genuinely, I want to meet this guy. Okay. If he's real, and I think he is, and that's nuts. But if he is, then I why not sit down and have a conversation with me, so that's my call to action to everybody. If you know anybody who's had any similar experiences with anybody that you think might be similar to Indrid Cold, I'd love to hear about them. But ever since I put the book out, it all stopped all of a sudden. I've not had any more weird occurrences with Indrid. The messages, the notifications on TikTok, they're gone. They don't happen anymore. So I don't know what that means either. So it'll drive you nuts chasing these rabbit holes. I promise you. Every single one of your favorite researchers went crazy, and there's a reason for it. It's a lot. Because you think you're getting onto something, and then you just can't. It's not attainable to us for whatever reason. But Alan Greenfield has an amazing. I don't know if you know who Alan Greenfield is, but you should. He has an amazing quote about that he uses about synchronicity, and what he says about it is that you might not get it, but if you're lucky, you'll be able to get the poetry of it. And I hate him so fucking much because he's. It's not fair, but he's right.
He is.
Yeah.
So I did get a very interesting question. Are you an empath?
We all are. Everybody is. Yeah, I am,
True
but you are
story.
too. And you are question asker. Everybody is. We all have it in us.
True story. Very true. Yeah, Pam found a couple of links there. That's kind of interesting. See, that's kind of my thing too. Is I'm wondering maybe he wanted you to write the book, and then when you did, he was like, "Okay, we're done with that."
And that's not fair to me. I don't think that's right. I have a lot of speculations, and in the book, the speculation that I have, I'll tell you what I think. I think Woodrow's experiences were real. I don't know if Tanya's were. Granted, there has been weird stuff that has happened to me, but I think Tanya, and I'm not saying she made it up to be malicious or wrong or weird, but I think that Tanya has a lot of trauma. I think this was a very traumatic experience for her. And I think that she subconsciously, Indrid took her dad. I mean, think about it. Tanya already did not have her biological father, has no idea who he is. And when children are very young like that and they go through a major change like that, it changes the chemistry of their brain. And I think that Indrid did come around when they were kids, but I think that he took her dad from her, because they had this friendship. They weren't able to have the family unit that she always wanted. Obviously he physically would take her dad, and go away to this faraway planet. And I think some of the really wholesome stories she tells about Indrid, I think that's actually Woody. I think that she's actually telling that story, and it's actually Woody who filled those shoes. And she always talks about Indrid like a father figure. And so I think that in her mind, if she keeps talking about it, she can, it's weird, but she can confront Indrid one day and ask, like, why did you ruin my life? Why'd you do this to me? But I don't know. Again, my mind changes every day on these topics. So I'm open minded enough to change it. But I do talk about that a little bit more in the book, and wanted that accountability there, because I dare you, Indrid Cold, come in here and change my mind. Do it. And then I'll write a new book about it and how you're great and I'm wrong.
Right, right. I find it the whole story is, like I said, it's just I become a little obsessed with it after a while.
Yeah.
Um, the topic of high strangeness in particular is uh, probably one of my favorite topics there is. Um, of course, the Mothman story itself is always going to catch my attention one way or the other.
Yeah.
So as we're rounding out the night, because we are heading well past the hour mark here.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. Actually, you know what? I've been looking forward to this so much. I could keep going at this point, but I do want to be mindful of your time and
Sure.
the time of my audience tonight as well.
I got to give people a reason to give me their money. I can't tell you the whole book. You got to buy it,
There you go. Well, and that's the thing is like, the book is definitely it's on my list of must-haves at this point. I have not read enough apparently lately. I've got stacks of books everywhere.
Don't feel bad. Me
Oh my
neither.
goodness, all the time.
Mhm.
So as we're rounding out the night, though, give us some final thoughts here um, on Indrid Cold, the Mothman, the whole 9 yards.
Sure. Like I was saying, I think that when I really sit down and think about it, I think these things are unattainable for us to understand. We're not meant to understand. I didn't really share. I didn't share my credentials with you guys. I went to school for astrophysics, and a lot of the theories that I have about this stuff is based in quantum mechanics and physics, things like that. The science, it's there, but not to prove it, to simply sort of understand it. We're third dimensional creatures. And these things are way above that. Do you know how many dimensions there are? I'll just ask you offhand. Do you know how many? It's okay if you don't.
Gosh, I really don't. I don't have any clue.
It's okay. Nobody does because they're infinite. There's infinite dimensions, so that means infinite possibilities. I think that we're not going to be able to really pinpoint it unless one of these things comes and holds a press conference on their own and explains all of it. And even then, I think that it's such a massive concept as to what they are, what they're doing here. We can't grasp it. We're not going to be able to. We're just not physically made to. Is that going to stop me from searching for it? Hell no. I'll do this until the day I die.
Right.
And I hope to kind of move the benchmark a little bit. Obviously, I think we all do when we get into something like this. We want to leave an impact, just period, on the world. That's humans, right? We all want to leave something behind. At least I have one book about Indrid Cold that will go on forever. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to continue to seek it out. I think that a lot of these things are connected, maybe not all of it. I think that it's too vast for all of it to be connected. I don't think that the Greys are the same as the Nordics, or the same as the Mothman, or the same as the Bigfoot, or the same as the ghosts, and so on and so forth. I mean, I think there are differences in all of them, and to pretend to think that they're all connected and they're the same thing, I think is kind of on track, but then a little too overzealous. Like I said, if any of us were right about these topics, then that would be the person we would all follow. But none of us are, and all of us have our own little, corners in this community, which I hope to expel, because at the end of the day, I think we all need to communicate better, and we're never going to get to the bottom of this without sharing alternative ideas and perspectives and expertises. I'm not an expert in anything by any means, but I am the person you should talk to if you want to talk about Indrid Cold. There's not anybody out there that knows more than me besides Indrid himself. I recognize that part, and that's not me being cocky. It's just a fact. And so if you are a person who's really good at, I don't know, demons or something, I'm not so good at something like that. So I need your help, and we can play off of each other and maybe see if there's a connection there. And I think we should. I think we need to. Yeah, I don't know. Happy hunting. Figure it out. Stay weird. I hope you find something.
Right. Definitely so. I really appreciate you coming on tonight. Like I said, I could keep this up forever, this conversation. I do want to get you to come back on in the future, and let's have some more conversation. My guys are like, Denise is all like, please bring Ashley back. So my guys are all excited about hearing more from you, and so am I.
Sure.
I'm going to go on and close this out. If you will hang tight for a moment, I will talk to you in just a moment.
Sure thing.
All right, good. Thank you. All right, guys. I'm telling you, tonight, again, a show that I really never thought was going to happen finally happened. And I feel like we got a lot of good feedback, a lot of good information, a lot of surprises. And I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. I know several of you did. We will have Ashley back on in the future to talk more with us about some of her findings about high strangeness and what the heck we think is going on. Again, next week, I want you guys to come back. I will be having Jenny and Mike on to talk about their experiences with the paranormal, and they will have a guest with them as well, who has worked on their case. So we look forward to that. Keep in tune, keep in touch. Don't forget to join us on magicaljourneypodcast.com and on the Facebook group, where you can find out all things Magical Journey. And may your journey always be magical.
I've waited for so long to see when you come back to me. Through the wars and battles that were lost, we're born again, it's you and me. The rest is history. Past lives. Past lives. been something in our past life.